Welcome one, welcome all. Another CIRF report. This one is going to be really important. I mean, they're all very important CIRF reports. We're looking for the collective energies that are going to be affecting us through the week of 8/26 to September 1st. In here, we do have a new moon. We'll be talking about that. That implies a new cycle, some changes, but we're on hyperdrive to change because we've got multiple aspects to Uranus. And with Uranus, all bets are off. He doesn't really give you any heads up on what's coming and good or bad. But there is some positive in the collective unconscious through the dreams that we've noticed. So it's all not all negative. But there is change coming, and the congruency is probably the highest score we've ever seen here. All these circles are virtually overlapping with each other. I did the I-Ching reading just a little bit different. I'll explain that a little bit later, but I didn't do that on purpose. I'll explain why I did it a little bit differently. I did it very rationally, but also with some intuition in there, and it netted some unbelievable results. I know I'm talking over everyone's head. I don't mean to. I'm going to get into those details later, but the dream bot is showing a shift. And that's totally expected with the astrology of trines to Uranus and a new moon in Virgo, a new way of seeing things, new way of details, etc. We're going to get into all that. We're going to start with the dream bot, though. This is the collective unconscious. The collective dreams is showing a shift. Number one word, shift. So really unbelievable to me how the energies just really go parallel. I mean, every time we do these dream bots, the more and more I'm just really impressed. But shift is not the only word that signifies change, because we have opening, realize, core. That's going to be that's some verbiage when we start talking about Sun trine Uranus, because Sun does represent the basic core of us, or the identity, our basic character. And that has that feel right there. Opening, realize, core. It's kind of like a new sense of ourselves is in there, a shift in that. And then there's some positivity, excited and interesting, and then lit. So that's a pretty interesting meme. But then the flip side of this, the blue arrows, is the complete opposite. It's a pile of crap. So the top word in that meme is pile, and then toilet, naked, below, tall, back, deeply. So it's like deep in a quicksand, deep in a pile of doo-doo, that kind of thing. It has that tone to it. And it's not a strong meme. I mean, it's not like it's direct overlaps, but you can kind of tell that all these words aren't real kind. They're kind of negative. So there's some negativity. And what I'm thinking is that any change, anytime we have to adapt, there's some anxiety there to get adapted. And the older we get, the mind typically refuses that adaptability. That's also called plasticity. As we get older, we tend to lose that plasticity or adaptability. And so that's what I think this pile of crap is the just the inability to see the silver lining in the change that's coming. But there is some excitement there, clearly, from the collective standpoint. So I want to paint a picture that's fairly balanced, because it is. There's some positive and some negative in this coming change. But what we do know is that a shift is coming. Now, that is a great introduction to the astrology, because there is nothing but change in here. Let me get the pointer out and I'll get started. We start our day on Monday. Now, for those of you who are starting to see a difference or a change in the relationships or change in finance, that has already begun this weekend. We call this the orb, where in this case, Venus trine Uranus the Venus is in that orb. It's within 8 degrees of a perfect trine. And so that's started well in this weekend. So those of you who are starting to feel those changes with relationships and maybe finance, that's what Venus represents. And of course, Uranus is all about change. That goes exact 10:38 a.m. on Monday morning. This is where the change really begins, though. This is when it goes exact. And then you can see the gaggle of other planets, including the moon. Eventually, as we get closer to the new moon, it too is going to make a trine to Uranus, making a total of 5 planets, planetary entities that are making a trine to Uranus. On Monday, expect a lot of emotional chaos, not just from this unexpected change, but also from all these other aspects from the moon. Moon being our emotional response. And so it's responding to a sextile, a square, an opposition, and 2 sextiles actually. So a lot of emotional chaos across many different genres, many different topic areas, but the change should probably be surrounding, at least in the early part of the week, relationships and finance. Let's move to Tuesday. And now we're starting to see Mars coming into the picture, working towards exact. Venus is past exact, but it's still within that orb, so it's still strong. So in essence, we now have 3 planets in a trine to Uranus. So the change on Tuesday starts to strengthen, and we might start sensing a more of a kind of a fight or flight to this change. Okay, on Wednesday, here's where we're kind of we're mismatched with emotions and maybe tired of the change process, or maybe seeing the inevitability of it. But anyway, the moon's making a square early in the morning to Uranus. A square produces obstacles. So emotions are conflicted with some sort of change in the environment. Then Mars goes exact at 5:52. Notice there's a lot of interesting timing in this week's, and this is one of them. It's 52 and 25, so they're very, very close. 5 o'clock in the morning, and so as we wake up on Wednesday morning, Mars is going exact with a trine to Uranus. So what is that trine? Trine or square? Trine is easy. Remember, it makes things easy. Now, that doesn't make it a pleasant experience versus a suffering experience. It just means that with relation to the topic at hand. So in this case, Mars is forward energy, and that forward energy is going to be easily changed, period. Or you might get some insights about what I need to be doing instead. I mean, consider this is Virgo. What am I fighting for? And we might be accidentally fighting against this change, and that's not the solution. And we're going to get into the solution later, so hang on with me. But on Wednesday is kind of the climax of the change, because Mars is in there going exact. And are we going to be with this change or going against it? And I think you're going to have a big waste of energy if you're going against the change. All right. Well, we're going to cover all that later with the solution. Now on Thursday, the sun, that's our basic ego and ego, basic character, ego wants, that kind of thing, ego drive, that makes a trine. So easy change with our ego needs or basic character. So this is that core that we're talking about in the collective unconscious. In addition, the moon is going to make a conjunction with Mercury. And by the way, Mercury is now within the orb, and so is the moon. And so none of these really are all that separate in terms of changing. In fact, some of this will have an effect. Like, for example, maybe like the emotions have an effect on the relationships, the Venus, even though those are the farthest part of the planets. Maybe emotions actually create change in the relationships, or relationship change creates emotions. It's just all absorbed together, and your level of Mars in there, your level of needing to fight against this change or resisting the change, that might produce some changes in your ego character and the way, and then Mercury, the way you think and the way you communicate. And so all those are very much all together as the moon is making a straightaway to the new moon on Friday. It's going to be the new moon, and 5:07 in the morning is 5 trine aspects to Uranus. That whole gaggle with the moon exact at 5:07 a.m. And then consider this. Okay, so this isn't really exact or anything, but look how the new moon at 5:36 a.m. Central Daylight Time, it coincides within a half hour of the moon going exact. And that's kind of the center point of all these 5 planets going trine to Uranus. Uranus being about change. And so is the new moon. New moon is about change. So all this upheaval is happening right at the end of the old moon cycle. And so we're going to get not just a fresh start in this new moon on Friday, but we're also getting kind of the aftermath of assessing what all has changed. In fact, we might be in the middle of a change at this point. So let's go through those one more time. What has changed? Relationships, potentially finance, potentially your sense of beauty or sense of wealth. The sense of what is worth something to you or what is of value. That whole thing can change. Mars, how you output energy, your level of energy, your fighting stance. Are you going to fight for this cause, or are you going to retreat and surrender? And we're going to be talking about that shortly. And then the sun is the basic character and your ego, and your ego level once. Are you going to keep that up, or is that's all changing? And then the way you think, that's Mercury behind here. You can barely see that. But Mercury's communication and thoughts, and all those thoughts change. Now, especially as the emotions, the moon, emotional response. Some people equate your parents with that as well. But all that changing right at the tail end or during this complete perfect cycle of the moon going exact with the sun, i.e. new moon. All right, heading into Saturday now. Welcome to the new phase. Moon's already expedited its way out and left us with still this trine to Uranus, but now a whole bunch of junk over here. We've got what's called a Tsquare developing. It's not exact yet. This is pre-exact, but it's within the orb. Venus opposed Neptune. And so, you're going to have to balance, but what you're seeing or what are you imagining with your relationships, and actually what you're doing with those relationships. You can say the same thing about money and maybe your retirement plan, and you're going to have to balance how you get that money, especially with Mars and ego, sun, all together in that. And then you got the beliefs with Mercury. So all that's important. A Tsquare can get kind of tricky. And so if Jupiter wants to expand everything, but it's a trap, because it's Tsquare is 2 squares. So here's 1 square, Venus over with Jupiter over with Neptune, but it's a trap. And because it's an illusion, that the illusion is with Neptune, giving you the illusion that you can expand, and maybe you get maybe you spend too much money, i.e. the finance piece, or maybe you go too overboard in your relationships. That's something to be watch out for on Saturday and Sunday, because on Sunday, by the way, Mercury's going exact with the trine, but Venus goes, still not exact, I guess, with the Tsquare components, but those are still there. Those are getting stronger even. So what we do have is an exact trine, Venus trine Saturn, and that's your way out of this T-square. If you get yourself caught in trying to expand too much of your egotistical wants, or maybe the wrong intentions, and maybe you get short-sighted and start biting off on too many promises out there, then your way out is to use Saturn. And so Saturn is not the just bad guy out there and making life hard for us, but he's also out there providing direction. And it's, by the way, the direction is nothing new. It's always what's been known in the past. It's solid foundation, but you got to utilize that in this time, as the case may be. All right, that's the astrology. And you can see the main theme here is Uranus with a trine to all these other aspects, producing a lot of change. Now, let's look at the I-Ching reading, and I'll show the difference here. This is what the intention was. And so instead of what I normally do is ask for the big influence and what is the solution, this case I did it a little bit differently, because I'm making an assumption that it's always changing. Life is always changing. And so looking at all that Uranus aspect, change is an understatement. And so I said, I already know that change is going to be the influence. I want to know what type of change that people will feel or experience the most during this next week. And the answer was 33 with 2 change lines. That means retreat. And we'll get into details on what these are, but when you put that change in, that turns into 25, innocence. And guess what innocence has the nickname for? The unexpected. This is bizarre. Now, what kind of change are they expecting? This is what we're getting into. The first confirmation that the I-Ching is agreeing with the change is that we are entering into a place where we're basically forced to be aware of the unexpected. Expect the unexpected. But let's get into the actual I-Ching readings. First of all, 33 is retreat. This is from the Book of Changes. Conditions are such that hostile forces favored by the time are advancing, or at least it feels like the hostile forces are advancing. In this case, retreat is the right course, and it is through retreat that success is achieved. So this is not a time for advancing, and this is going to be very hard for that Mars aspect that is right in the middle of the gaggle. They would call it the stellium. Stellium is 3 or more planets in that same little space of sky. And so we have 5 planets, Mars being one of them. But Mars is going to have to retreat. And the image, mountain under heaven. The image of retreat. The superior man keeps the inferior man at distance, not angrily, but with reserve. So now it's time to talk about our 2 change lines. We have change 1 and 3. And these are important because they tell us how, or a little bit more details about how to retreat. 6 at the beginning, that's this one. At the tail in retreat, this is dangerous. One must not wish to undertake anything. So basically, we're not doing anything. We're not starting anything. In fact, it's dangerous to do such. It is not advisable to undertake anything. Keeping still is the easiest way of escaping from the threatening danger. In a retreat, it is advantageous to be at the front. Here, one is at the back in immediate contact with the pursuing enemy. This is dangerous. All right. So we need to retreat. And that one says that we're closer to the enemy than, just the general 33. We're actually very close to the enemy. So now let's talk about the third line. 9 in the third place means a halted retreat. It is nerve-wracking and dangerous. To retain people as men and maid servants brings good fortune. What it's saying here is that we are going to be held back from a sensation of freedom, freedom of movement to be able to adapt, and we'll feel confined. And if those, I mean, in the literal sense, if people are keeping us from having that freedom of action, then it's suggesting to not retain those, or not do the karmic duty of retaining them as servants, basically, in retaliation, but just letting everything fall helplessly is what it talks about. So it's not taking people in. It's not being resentful. All that. It's just getting away from the threat and running and retreating, going to your safe haven. What is retreat? That is retreat. It's get to your safe place. Not literally, but also in your mind. And mind is cluttered with false perceptions, and we really need to clean that intention up. So now that's the kind of the starting point of the energy, but that retreat quickly changes into innocence, or the need for innocence. This is also called the unexpected. From the Book of Changes, everything sprouts and grows, and all beings receive from the creative activity of nature the childlike innocence of their original state. Now, what is absolutely really cool is that in Sidereal Astrology, as we are going to see, the lion is the state of childlike innocence, and that's Leo. And just a hint, even though it's Virgo in the tropical, the Sidereal Astrology has it in Leo, and so that's going to be the solution. But let's talk about 25 a little bit further. In springtime, when thunder, life energy, begins to move again under the heavens, everything sprouts and grows, and all beings receive from the creative activity of nature the childlike innocence of their original state. So it is with good rulers of mankind, drawing on the spiritual wealth at their command. They take care of all forms of life and all forms of culture, and do everything to further them, and at the proper time. So it almost sounds like losing your memory of things that were bad about situations or whatever, not to bring the past with you as you start to perceive and interpret the future, or especially this change. We need to have a childlike innocence as this change unfolds. The wonderment, the excitement, the not taking for granted that you already know what the outcome is, because we never really do. The future hasn't happened yet. Okay. So here is the solution. But one thing I did mention before, I want to go back and talk about this. The new moon down here in tropical Virgo. By the way, Virgo is very detail-oriented, practical, gets things done, but doesn't miss a beat, doesn't miss a detail, very detail-oriented. But the solution from the I-Ching said that childlike innocence was there. And so this is Leo on the Sidereal Astrology. This going back to our original concept of the dual zodiacal system. Leo or Sidereal Astrology is the solution. In this case, Leo is Ed. And Leo is can get very egotistical at times. It can kind of get needy especially for like public recognition and that kind of thing. It's not really what we're looking for from Leo. The sides of Leo that we're looking at now are going back to your youth and the way you perceive the world. Don't take for granted that you already know everything. Enter a very creative space, a wonderment. Start to notice more things that brings you in the present moment, which is an experience that Leos are notorious for. Not notorious. Notorious means bad, but it's a good thing. It's good that they're very present. They're here. They're engaged with the world, and we should be too. We should be engaged with the change, but not undertaking anything new in particular. That's kind of the paradox here. Leo can get things done as a fire sign. But we're not really starting new things at this point until after the new moon, the new phase begins, and after the last of the trines to Uranus. So we don't want to get things started until we know what all the changes are. All right, and here's our solution slides. This is National Dream Center going out tomorrow, Monday. Can't hide from Uranus, no way. And with 6, including that square to Uranus, 6 aspects with Uranus and a new moon. Expect the unexpected this week, but do it from a place of genuine childlike innocence. And we'll say that in the next slide. This one going out to intervention. The big changes in the air. And the solution with the I-Ching 33 and 25. We need to retreat to innocence. Success from childlike wonder and innocence. Not favorable to start new projects this week. Man, it's a lot of words, a lot of slides. I hope you got the nuts and bolts of this. It is a time to retreat, go within, not to alienate the world at all. It's more of a metaphor for going in and consolidating your energy. If you're starting big projects this week, man, my heart's out to you, but you're probably going to be wasting some time on this, especially as you watch the change unfold, and then you got to pick up the pieces after that. But it's not all a bad thing. We need to be used to change. It's a skill. It's a skill that you use. It's also a skill that you lose over time. The ability to change with life as it changes. And it really is changing more rapidly than ever before, especially as technology changes. So anyway, hope this was of help for you, and have a great week. I hope the best for every soul who's watching, all the souls on planet Earth, that we punch through into a positive future for all of us. But positive is subjective, and really we should be hoping for, or should be planning for, no matter what happens, we shall grow from it. We shall evolve. We'll get stronger, even if it's a positive change. But positive, negative change is a little bit more of ego wants. We should be more worried about what soul wants. All right, that's it. I got to get out of here. Take care, everybody. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you later.